welcome everyone. Today is class number 3 in the Joy series. Every class is a separate unit, but they all build on one major idea, and that is your thoughts create your life now. You're always in the now, you're always in the present. Because the word mind, we mentioned, is an acronym, Rashi Tevis. M stands for memory. A happy, joyful person remembers what they're grateful for, remembers their highlights. I recommend keeping a highlights journal. But every day, what is my highlight for today? There's always going to be a couple highlights. And then you look back over your highlight list, you'll see, wow, I have a lot of highlights. And even some of the first 2 highlights I consider in your life, besides the day you were born, is the first day you said your first word and the day you took your first step. People don't remember the day they took the first step and don't remember the day they said the first word, but it's a highlight. That's beginning your whole career of talking, career of walking. So, but then we have gratitude. And that's really the essence. To be happy is gratitude and kindness. So today's class is going to be focusing on Torah attitudes towards other people. So we said there's mind. Let's go finish that off. Memory, imagination. I is imagination. Everything not in the present moment is your imagination. So we can understand that the future is your imagination. In this class, whenever the telephones ring, some of these telephone rings say, thank God we're alive, thank God we can hear. Baruch Hashem we're alive, Baruch Hashem we can hear. What do we say when you hear a telephone ringing? Baruch Hashem alive, Baruch Hashem I can hear. This way you constantly have reminders that you're alive and you can hear. Okay, so we have memory, imagination. Some people use their imagination to create negativity for themselves. They imagine negative things happening and then they worry in the present because it's what your mind is doing now that creates you, whether you're thinking about the past or future, but really, N is now because we're always now. You breathe now. And we mentioned in class number 1, to master happiness and joy, that the last verse in Tehillim, in Psalms chapter 150, is Kol HaNeshama Tahalakar, entire soul should praise God. The Medrash says, I'll call Neshima Tahalakar. Thank God for every single breath. So the very fact that you're breathing, I am grateful that I'm breathing now. I'm grateful that I'm breathing now. I'm grateful that I'm breathing now. So therefore, if you want to know, what if I'm stuck in a lousy state and I want to be in a better state, just, wow, I am breathing now. That's fantastic. First of all, great, I'm alive. 2 is, I am breathing. I am grateful, and I thank the Almighty for each and every breath. Wherever you go, you have oxygen. And oxygen, no matter where on the planet you go, you'll have oxygen, and you have something to be grateful for. And D in mind is decide how you want to be determined to be that way and do. Decide, determine, do. Okay, that's mind. So today's class we're focusing on Torah attitudes towards other people. Because when you see another person, there's an ayin tova or an ayin ra. You have a good eye to see what's good about another person, or ayin ra, negative eye, see what's wrong with another person. So the more we have this positive way of looking at people, positive lens, to see people in a positive way, it enhances our life. It upgrades the way we interact with people. Even when we think about people that we, in the past, our past interactions with other people, it's always how we see it now. And when we think about interacting with people in the future. But we're always interacting with people now because either you're talking to somebody or not talking to somebody. Whoever is not around you, all it is in your mind, it's in your imagination. And the people that upgrade their imagination all the time, they keep seeing themselves interacting with people in a great way. So the Torah source for a positive attitude towards other people is in Vayikra, the 3rd book of the Torah, chapter 19, verse 18, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love other people as yourself. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. 3 words, love other people as yourself. Matter of fact, Reb Nosson Tzvi Finkel, the late head of Mir Yeshiva, spoke to children at a gathering they had in Chalamoid Pesach a number of years ago. Reb Nosson Tzvi Finkel, he was head of Mir Yeshiva. He at the time he had Parkinson's for 28 years, and towards the end of his life, he was very, very weak. And he got up to speak. He was so weak that he could only say 3 words, and it was about Shmiras HaLashon. There was a gathering about teaching young children to be careful with what you say. And he said, V'ahavta, and every word was very hard for him to say. L'reacha kamocha. Love other people, as you say, as yourself. That's all he could say, those 3 words, and then he sat down. That was his whole speech. Shortest speech I ever saw, 3 words. I saw it and heard it, I was there. 3 words, and real impact, because when we have this consciousness of loving other people, we're careful how we speak to people and about people. And we'll have a whole class, The Power of Words. That's one of the classes we have in this series. Love other people as yourself. Meaning, says Ramban, Nachmanides, in his commentary on the Torah, love other people as yourself, just as you want your success in life, you should wish other people success. Wish other people to have it good. Reb Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in his classic work, Mesilas Yesharim, Path of the Just, writes, Kamocha Mamish. When it says love other people as yourself, it literally is yourself. Kamocha B'li Shem Hefresh. Like yourself, without any difference, we should really love other people as ourselves. Included in that will be the whole concept of Avas Chesed, loving kindness. Now, the other basic Torah idea, a fundamental consciousness about people, is Eze Mechubad. Who's an honorable person? HaMechabed es Habrios. The one who shows honor and respect to other people. That means that we should look at every person. People are created b'tselem Elokim. People are created in God's image. And we have to look at every person as special. Every person deserves respect. And sometimes people ask, well, what if a person's really totally evil? We're not talking about that. And usually the people you're going to interact with most of the time, they might get on your nerves, but they're not evil. So those are the 2 consciousnesses. One is love, the other is respect. Avas Chesed, loving kindness. My father's Rabbi, who was the Chafetz Chaim, my father learned in his yeshiva in Radin, Poland. And before my father died, he told me to write in his tombstone, Zocha lekabel Torah mipiv shemron Chafetz Chaim b'Radin. He merited to hear Torah from the mouth of the Chafetz Chaim in Radin. So he grew up with that consciousness of the Chafetz Chaim, and besides writing the book Chafetz Chaim, which was a book, literally means wanting life, based on chapter 34 in Tehillim and Psalms about being careful with what you say, he wrote a book called Avas Chesed, loving kindness, the importance of all forms of chesed. Every act of kindness that you do is a Torah commandment, fulfillment of Torah mitzvah. Moreover, when it comes to your own happiness and a state of well-being, when you do acts of kindness, your brain produces positive chemicals and the pleasure part of your brain lights up. So a person who is an oyev chesed, a person loves kindness and does kindness and thinks about kindness, you're creating a high quality life for yourself. We spoke about the poem that I wrote about high quality thinking and low quality thinking. And just being aware, what am I thinking about when I think about other people? Some people have developed a habit of seeing faults in other people, what's wrong with other people. And every person we ever encounter will have strengths and weaknesses. Everybody has positive things and negative things. And the key element is to focus on that via haftareh kamocha, avas chesed, loving kindness. Now Shlomo Melech, King Solomon in Mishle, Proverbs, has an amazing verse about interacting with other people, how we should perceive other people. And the verse goes like this: Kamayim hapanim lapanim, as in water face to face, kain leiv adam ladam, so too is the heart of one person to another. That means when you see another person, first of all, when you see yourself in water or any mirror, you can see a smile or a frown. What will you see? Depends, of course. If you smile, you get a smile. If you frown, you get a frown. How old do you have to be to realize that? A 2-year-old kid realized that pretty fast. That if you want to face in the mirror to wave and smile to you, so smile and wave to the mirror, and it always smiles back to you. People sometimes will, sometimes won't. Well, we find Chazal say, the sages tell us in Pirkei Avos, Mekabos kol adam b'simcha, greet every person with joy, and Mekabos kol adam b'sever panim yafos, greet every person with a positive facial expression. I remember once a taxi driver, I live on Tani Me'iro Street, and a taxi driver, they told 14 Panimiras, and he left me off. And then he said to me, Zeh Shem Tov L'Rchov. It's a nice name for a street, Panimiras. I said, Atot Tzodek, you're right. So he says, you're saying I need Tzodek. My wife never tells me I'm right. So I thought that was interesting. When we have the class about preparing for a joyful marriage, we'll elaborate on that theme. But that's, it's smart to be able to find, what do you agree with? It's called agreement frame. Because can you disagree with what anybody says? You always find a way to say a little different than anybody else thinks, and no two people think exactly alike. Said the Kutzker Rebbe. There's a statement of the sages in the Medrash, Kashem Shem Parsufayim Domazu, Kachen Deosem as Domazu. So just as no two people look exactly alike, so too no two people think exactly alike. Said the Kutzker Rebbe, it doesn't bother you that somebody looks differently than you. You don't expect anybody, unless you have a identical twin, nobody's going to look exactly like you. It doesn't bother you. You expect that's the way the world works. Of course somebody looks different than me. So too, nobody's going to think exactly like me. Every person thinks in their own way, uniquely. So the Kutzker Rebbe said that we have to develop the habit that it shouldn't bother us. Now, sometimes we feel we're right, they're wrong, and we can discuss it, because there's a major difference between getting in a heated battle with somebody. There's a word machlokas, quarrels. So getting along peacefully and shalom with people means we can disagree, but there's ways of disagreeing that with respect to other people and with disrespect. And a key element would be to have that sense of consciousness of respect to other people, even if they disagree. Again, sometimes it can be very challenging, but especially with people that we interact with a lot, it's very valuable, very important. There was a non-Jewish janitor in one in Telz Yeshiva that he used to say that he's waiting for people to get in fistfights with each other, people screaming and yelling and arguing and learning, and he's going to end up being disappointed, because when people have that rischa deoraisa, that fiery interaction in Torah learning, people don't hit each other. Like, you disagree, but you disagree in a way that is focusing on the issues at hand, not making it personal. Now, when it says in the pasuk, "Lo sikom v'lo sitar," don't take revenge and don't bear a grudge. Lo sikom v'lo sitar. So back up a little bit. That verse we started saying, "Kamayim hapanim lepanim," as in water face to face, so to the heart of one person another. If we want other people to feel positive towards us, it's important to give out positive energy. Think and feel positive about another person. And this can really be helpful at certain times. I remember an incident I had when my father, bless his memory, was sick. My father had cancer, and he was in Baltimore, Johns Hopkins Hospital. Then he got out of the hospital, so he was too weak to walk the far distance from our house to his shul where he was rabbi. So I walked in my father's shul by myself. It was the first time in 7 years that I have been there for Shabbos and walked there for Shabbos. And along the way, there was a man who was a little drunk, and we started talking. And after a couple of minutes, 5 guys came up to me and they encircled me, and they were ready to attack. So I thought maybe they want to rob me. So I said, "Oh, it's my Sabbath." Ready to say it's my Sabbath. I'm not carrying anything. Pockets are empty. But I look at this person that I was talking to, and I said to him, "Hey, friend," thinking of the verse that Shlomo Melech said, as in water, face to face, so the heart of one person another. "Hey, friend, can you tell him to leave me alone?" He says, "Hey, brothers, he's my friend. Leave him alone." And they went like this and left me alone, and I just waved to them again. Now, today I would interview them and ask them what they were thinking and thing, but this was a while back, about 32 years ago. I was happy to get out of there safe and sound, and I just waved to them and kept going. So this consciousness, it was about 35 years ago, about 1978. So very, very, very helpful. And because what happens a lot of times, somebody says something in anger to us, and we say anger back, and then we think we'll accomplish something. We don't accomplish anything, because if you're giving out negative, angry energy, that's what the person picks up. And the key element is that as in keep giving out, give out love, give out respect, radiate joy and love. And that's why I think that statement of, as an affirmation, I radiate joy and love, I radiate joy and love, I radiate joy and love, having that as a consciousness, I radiate joy and love, you're giving out good energy to people. You change your state, you change their state. So when it says in the Torah, lo sikam, lo sitar, don't take revenge, don't bear a grudge. So first of all, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in his classic work, Masilat Yesharim, writes that revenge is musik midvash. It's sweet as honey to get revenge. And it is only easy for malach yasharis. It's only easy for angels not to take revenge and just be a hafta, like it says in the verse, lo sikam v'lo sitar, don't take revenge, don't bear a grudge, v'hafta kamocha, love other people as yourself. Now the Talmud asks, what is the definition of revenge, and what's the definition of bearing a grudge? The Talmud says like this, what's revenge? If, let's say, someone refuses to do you a favor. You want to borrow something, and they say, no, we don't want to borrow, don't want to lend it to you. So then they come over to you and ask to borrow something. If you say, you don't lend me, I'm not going to lend you. That's considered a Torah prohibition of don't take revenge. But what if you'd say, you know what, you didn't lend me, but I'm going to lend you anyways. So you think I'm a nice guy. Really, no, he didn't lend me, and I'm going to lend him. I'm doing him a favor. But if you mention it, that when you're doing him the favor, you remind him about how he didn't do you a favor, that's considered lo sitar. Don't bear a grudge. I mean, that you can use as leverage. If you want somebody to do you a favor, you can do, I did you favors. You can use that as leverage. But when you're doing him a favor, you shouldn't remind him how he didn't act kindly towards you. And again, is it easy? Real hard. Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, it's very difficult, but what can we do? It's what Torah obligates us. So it's a consciousness that is theoretically hard and difficult. However, when we really think, what in my life, if I really think with a wise perspective, I think wisely, what's in my best interest? Because ultimately, by giving out good energy to people, being kind to people, most people reciprocate. There's a famous book by Cialdini called Influence, and one of the basic ideas are that when you do a favor for people, they're more likely to do favors back for you. So purely in enlightened self-interest, it's worthwhile being kind to people. But for Torah consciousness, it means regardless of how this person is going to be towards me, whether he acts an ideal way or not, my Torah obligation is love your neighbors yourself. Treat people with honor and respect. Every story we hear about people who lived elevated lives, who are kind, compassionate, we can learn from. That Avas chesed. There was one big Torah scholar who lived in Jerusalem many years ago. He used to carry around a little valise, and he had there all kind of things that people would need to borrow. Like he would carry scissors, he would carry Band-Aids, he would carry thread and needles, like all kind of things that people might need. He just carried with him. If somebody needs it, oh, happen to have this with me now. And he would have all kind of things that might be needed, like special travel things. But where he went, he was, this way I can do Avas chesed, loving kindness. There's here like machim, a lot of free loan societies. And standard free loan society is lending money, but they have, I remember one of them that was very interesting, a mach for motzatzim, that's pacifiers. And they advertise that anytime after the stores are closed at night, in the middle of the night, if they give a little child that wakes up and needs a pacifier, and you don't have a pacifier, you can ring on their bell anytime, not 24 hours a day, because not when the stores are open, go to the store. But when the stores were closed, you get a pacifier, a clean pacifier, brand new, in this little wrapper, and you get to buy them back one and give back another one. So it was very fascinating. That's one of the more interesting ones. There's machim for medicine. Let's say you have a prescription, but the pharmacy is not open, so they would lend out different medicines. They had a whole stack of medicines, and you had to show them the prescription for the doctor, but they lent you the medicine, and then you would go to the pharmacy and get the medicine and give them return the medicine. So it's more creative someone is about how to do acts of kindness. And the essence is seeing people the way they see themselves. Rav Dessler has a beautiful essay on this in his classic work, Michtam Elio, about how all quarrels come because we see other people from our perspective. And the more you can enter another person's world, see this person as they're seeing themselves. It's very important for dealing with children, very important to deal with anyone. How does this person see the situation? Enter this person's mind. We can't be mind readers, but we can enter, what do I think this person is thinking? How do I think this person is perceiving the situation? And acts of kindness. Now, if someone is kind to us, it's easy. Somebody's really nice to us all the time, very easy to be nice back. The challenge is, if somebody doesn't act towards us the way we would like, we have still do it because that's a Torah way of interacting with people, having that deep sense of love. There was a great Torah scholar, Isser Zalman Meltzer. Before he gave lectures, he would go to a side room. And somebody was very curious on what was he doing in the side room where he went before he gave his lecture. And he would walk back and forth and saying that that before he would give his lecture, some students might ask questions, and sometimes they might ask annoying questions, and he might say something that's not respectful to the student. So he very consciously repeated the verse of Avas Yisrael, of V'ahavta Kamocha, that having that love for the students, that to treat them positively, even though they might ask something that's a little off, it might sound funny. And there were a lot of Torah scholars that when people ask questions in the middle of their lectures, if the question wasn't really to the point, they would upgrade the question. Oh, maybe you meant to say this and this. And Mr. Zalman Meltzer, who was very much fulfilled this idea, when he gave a Torah quiz to students, and somebody gave an answer that wasn't right, he would say, probably you meant this and this, right? And usually people got the point that they made a mistake, and he says, yes, okay, good, that's what I meant. Yeah. And there was one student, one time, who was totally, he made a mistake off, and he said to the student, you probably mean this and this. He says, no, I don't mean that, I mean this and this, and that's what the right answer is. And that wasn't the right answer, and Rizal said, no, I'm sure you meant this and this. So he did it over and over again, and hopefully the student would get it and say, okay, I got you. Right? Or you don't have to say, oh, that's what I meant. The person might be honest and say, that's not what I meant, but I see that's the right answer, and I accept that. But you have to have a person with a lot of self-confidence to do that, because it takes a lot of self-confidence to say, I was wrong. And it's very hard for us to say those words. I was wrong. I was wrong. Let's all try to practice that now, to say, I was wrong. Terrific. Good. Now, was that hard? Right? The reason why it's not so hard when we just sit in a room just repeating it is because we're not acknowledging to anybody else, so therefore our ego is not involved. But if we're armed with somebody, and they do have a good point, so we say, but I was right over here. A key element is acknowledging when somebody else gets something right. So we're in the Torah consciousness, v'ahavta re'ach kamocha, love other people as yourself, the idea of Avas chesed, loving kindness, and having a Torah lens of respect when we see people. Because the same way, like if you have, my father has an essay that he wrote when he was a student in Radin, in the 50th anniversary of Reb Shimon Shkop's being a head of yeshiva. So there was, the Grodno Yeshiva put out a commemoration. They had essays from different people from different yeshivas, and my father has an essay, and he spoke there about microscopes and telescopes. That a telescope can show something that's far away, and it brings it close by. A microscope takes something that's very small and makes it big. So he said that Shimon Shkop had that virtue, that he was able to take Torah ideas from far away and bring them close. He was able to take ideas that otherwise would be very small and make them big. But with this consciousness, when it comes to a lens of seeing life, to seeing other people, there's all different type of lenses, and the idea of a lens of Avas Chesed, loving kindness, a lens of Avas Abrius, loving other people. Because Meir tells us in the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avos that a person that learns Torah Lishma, learns Torah with pure motivations, it says, your oyev is a makom, oyev is a brius. You love the Creator, you love people, misameach is a makom, misameach is a brius. Bring joy to God, bring joy to people. And that consciousness of loving people and bringing joy to people, because every time we can do anything that is kind to another person, that's that part of the Avas Chesed, giving good advice. For instance, in the Vidui that we say, especially around Yom Kippur, Sarasimei Tshuva, there's the idea of Vidui, oral confession to God. And the standard one goes according to the Aleph Beis, the whole Hebrew alphabet, and a lot of the things over there are mentioning things that we did wrong to other people. And there's one of them, Ya'atz L'Ra, giving bad advice. If people ask you advice, there's a challenge that, first of all, be willing to say, I don't know. I don't know. What do we have to be willing to say? Put it together. I don't know. Because when you're willing to, I don't know, now, how can we 100% positive that if we think that something is right, we have a right to say it to someone, but we should try to do the best we can. There's over here, there's the yeshiva, Rabbi Zilberman has the yeshiva here in the old city. And when the Rabbi Zilberman, the one that founded the yeshiva, passed away, I went to Menachem Avel. They had my comforting mourners, and someone came that knew Rav Zilberman when he was a young student, And one of his sons, one of Zilberman's sons, asked that person, he said, you knew my father when he was a young boy. You studied together with my father in school when you were both young. What quality did you see in my father that he grew up with that positive quality? And he says, oh, whenever your father tried to help anybody, he always entered that person's world to see the world as, to tell you from your viewpoint, what entering your world, because it's very easy to give people advice, and the outside means not entering that person's world, but it's much higher level of entering that person's world. How does this person see the situation? What does he need? And so every aspect of chesed and helping a person, Chofetz Chaim writes in his Avas chesed, loving kindness, that helping people overcome emotional pain and distress is the fulfillment of the mitzvah of nichum avelim, comforting mourners. That when you comfort a mourner, it can't bring the person back alive again. Nevertheless, the fact that you show you care, that it's important how this person feels, it's not alone, you're mishtatif in his tsar, you join together. Same way when a person makes a positive occasion, person makes a wedding, that you have this mishtatif in his simcha, and joining in his celebration. As the Chofetz Chaim writes, that when you celebrate something yourself, you don't have the same joy that when you have other people joining with you. Other people are participating, they're taking part. And so people care. Like a person gets married, if there's nobody shows up at the wedding, like they're still happy, like they get married, but it takes away something. The fact that people come and willing to dance and sing and say positive things, that it's a good feeling for a person. And the worse a person feels, in general, the more important it is to mishtatif in their simcha, in joining in with their celebrations, and also in joining in their suffering. And for instance, there's a mitzvah of bikur cholim, visiting the sick. Visiting the sick, just you show you care. And sometimes you give good advice, help the person out in some way. There was a very distinguished rabbi, Rav Shimon Schwab, Zichron Livracha, blessed memory, and I met him once at a Torah Masorah conference, and he told me, I always wanted to speak to him, he told me that 50 years before, in Mir Yeshiva in Yom Kippur, my father had studied in Radin, but after the Chofetz Chaim died, the mashgiach in the Chofetz Chaim's yeshiva sent my father to the Mir to hear lectures from Rucham Levavitz. And that year, my father was there on Yom Kippur. Reb Shimon Schwab was sick, and he told me that the only person that came to Mivaka Chayla was my father, and he always so grateful to my father. And years later, they both were rabbis in Baltimore, and eventually Reb Shimon Schwab became rabbi in Washington Heights in New York. But then he said I remember seeing, and the way he said it to me, that I'm so grateful to your father for visiting me then. It meant so much to me. And I thought it was very interesting. My father he wasn't officially a student in the Mir, he was just visiting, but the fact that somebody cared and somebody visited him, that Shimon Schwab remember this 50 years later. Also, when you say giving words of encouragement, that's one of the best, highest levels of kindness. We had class number 2 in the series, is building self-image. When you help a person see themselves in a positive light, that's not only a kindness now. Like the Rambam says, that there's 8 levels of tzedakah. There's 8 levels of charity. The highest level of charity is not giving a person money, but rather helping a person earn money on his own. Because as the statement goes, that if you give a person a fish, you give him one meal, you give him a fish meal now. But you teach a person how to fish, you give them fish for the rest of their life. And someone else said that if you teach a person how to fish and then how to sell the fish they catch, they're not only going to have fish every meals, they can buy house and car and everything else they need. So the more you can upgrade what a person can do, help a person's skills, but if a person feels good about themselves, building this positive self-image, and that's why it's so valuable. A lot of people are going to judge what they can do based on what feedback they get from other people. And you're part of the feedback that people get, to keep giving people encouragement. The last quote I have in Gateway to Happiness is from Victor Miller, and he says that everyone, from the most successful to the least successful, we all need encouragement. Every person needs encouragement. And make it a career to help encourage people. So we have to keep looking, what can I say to this person that will encourage them? What can I say to this person, not only help them now, but will go with them and be with them for years to come? Okay, to summarize, the key elements are love other people as yourself. That implies that we have love for ourselves. That's because we have building self-image. That feeling, that positive sense of love, our essence is our spirituality, our neshama, our soul. We have love ourselves, love other people, and Avas chesed, loving kindness. Keep looking for acts of kindness. Automatically brings joy. Years ago, Alfred Adler said how to overcome depression in 14 days. Keep doing acts of kindness for other people. When you do acts of kindness, he didn't know, he died in 1936. They didn't know yet about the biochemistry of emotions, that when we do positive things, there's basic positive chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, oxytocin, there's positive chemicals, and when we do acts of kindness, the brain produces positive chemicals. So that's when so some people would look at that, isn't it selfish? Because first of all, there's a very famous essay from Shimon Shkop about how we're only going to do things for ourselves, but how do you define self? The more elevated a person is, the more they define self includes more and more people. That they care about other people so much that when they do for other people, that's really themselves. And imena nili mili, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? Ukshani la'atzmi money. But if all it is, I'm for myself, and that's it, what is that? That's really limiting ourselves tremendously. So the goal is not to limit ourselves, to have that avas chesed, to have that love for other people, and show respect to every single person. Machabed other people, because everyone is creating God's image, everyone deserves respect, and look at every single person. What can I say to this person to make this person feel good? And that you get many opportunities of chesed that way.
With all this joy and happiness and being positive, how do you train the mind? How do you train yourself to just be continuously happy and positive when you don't receive? You were talking about how when you give positive energy, you attract positive energy. So how do you, when you're surrounded by people who are constantly negative or maybe are mean to you or not respecting you, how do you get past that?
Very good question. So first of all, when we're little kids, we don't have our choices. But let's say we're old enough, we can choose who we're around. Spend more time with people that are positive towards you. And if let's say you can't find anybody that be positive towards you, use a mirror.
But even something like...
If you use a mirror, you're going to keep giving yourself encouragement, because then you can always go to a mirror and say, you're wonderful, you should have a great day, I wish you so success, and thinking that you have a lot of strength.
Right. But let's say you're in a situation where you, everyone has emotions, and everyone has feelings, and sometimes you're angry or something upsets you. Right. Or let's say you're at a market, someone yells at you, or you encounter a stranger or something that bugs you. How do you get past that? So
good question. That's why we have one of the classes in the series is based on a book that I wrote called Anger, the Inner Teacher, How to Deal with Anger. And so in a nutshell, the more we can be joyful, positive, and wise, we need a wise balance, of course. With a wise balance, the more we'll be able to interact with other people in a positive way. Most people reciprocate. The vast majority of people reciprocate, and if you're around people who don't, the key element is the goal is to be able to upgrade the way you're thinking to be able to give yourself encouragement.
This is basically like overcoming it, or kind of not letting it bother you.
Because they go, and it's skill, and for some people, only a few individuals find that easy, of course, it's harder. However, we have that ability as people to be able to override. Matter of fact, the Rambam writes that in his commentary, Pirkei Avos, he says about a chassid echad that was asked, this righteous person, what was the happiest day of your life? He says, I was on a ship and people made fun of me and mocked me and jeered me. That was the happiest day of my life. Usually people say, that was awful. The people really treated me with disrespect. But he so upgraded his way of being that the fact that he could be independently joyful, he doesn't need other people to make him joyful. So there's a human nature, we are influenced by other people. And therefore, Rambam writes, since we're influenced by other people, we should try to find people that are positive influences on our lives. But if we don't, let's say a person is stuck for a while or for a long time, but we have the ability to override and go beyond that. And it's a challenge, it's a skill. Like the first sentence again, with happiness, we wrote the happiness is a skill that can be learned, and this is a skill, hard skill, but it's like climbing Mount Everest, and it's humanly possible. Yes?
Why do you think it's so hard for people to be positive and complimentary and encouraging to those around us, even if we really care about them? Why is that such a challenge?
I don't know, because I've had two positive parents, and basically my father was a student of Chofetz Chaim. So if we're in an environment, the more positive environment that we're in, and it is a challenge, like in school. So but we have the human ability to override negativity. Again, we're in the present all the time, and when we think back in the past, we can choose how we look at any event. As someone once said, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. That we can take situations, let's say a person had a really negative childhood. Right now, if they're old enough to be able to think about it, you can override any negativity by seeing yourself having a positive input from other people.
That would cause you to become sad.
Yeah, but the question still is like, it's harder and easier. It depends, a lot has to do with what we grew up. A person grew up real and positive parents, positive siblings, positive teachers. Usually they're going to be positive. And if we don't have from external, then we goal is to be able to do it internally. Okay, wish everyone well.